Once upon a time, in a village cradled by the deep green arms of the great forest, in a small hut at the edge of this village lived Okafor, a hunter, and his young son, Chidi. Their hut had mud walls that were cool to the touch and a roof made of tightly woven dry grass. They were poor. While other families had barns full of big brown yams, Okafor's barn was often half empty. Hunting was difficult work, and sometimes the forest held on to its creatures tightly. Chidi was a quiet boy of 12 reins. He was thin but wiry, like a young sapling. His eyes were large and dark, always watching the world with intense curiosity. He did not have many friends, for he spent most of his time following his father's silent footsteps through the dense bush. He learned to read the cracked twigs, the disturbed leaves, and the faint smell of animals on the breeze. "The forest is alive, Chidi," Okafor would whisper, his hand resting on the hilt of his rusty iron machete. "It sees us. We must respect it. We take only what we need for our bellies, never more." Chidi nodded, his red neck beads clinking softly. He respected the forest, but he also feared its deep shadows where the sun never reached. One humid afternoon, Okafor and Chidi were tracking a bush pig. The tracks were fresh. Okafor signaled for Chidi to wait by a large silk cotton tree while he circled ahead. Chidi stood perfectly still, letting the sounds of the forest wash over him. The buzzing of insects, the distant call of a hornbill, the rustle of wind high above in the canopy. Suddenly, a thrashing sound broke the stillness near his feet. Chidi jumped back, his heart hammering against his ribs. He looked down into a tangle of thorny vines near the base of the great tree. There, trapped fast in the sharp thorns, was a magnificent snake. It was not an ordinary snake. It was a royal python, thick as Chidi's thigh and longer than 2 men lying end to end. Its scales were a beautiful pattern of deep brown, tan, and gold, shimmering even in the dim light. It was sacred, a messenger of the earth goddess, Allah. The python had tried to squeeze through the vines and become hopelessly stuck. The more it writhed, the deeper the thorns dug into its patterned skin. It was exhausted, its movement slowing. Chidi knew he should run away. A snake of this size, even not venomous, was dangerous. Or, his hunger whispered, he should call his father. A snake this big would feed them for many days. It would be a great feast. But as Chidi looked at the snake, it stopped struggling and lifted its broad head. Its golden eyes with vertical black slits looked directly into Chidi's. There was no malice in those eyes, only a deep, ancient weariness and a silent plea. Chidi's heart softened. He remembered his father's words about respect. "You are a child of Allah," Chidi whispered to the snake. "I cannot eat a messenger." Moving slowly so as not to frighten the creature further, Chidi took out his small hunting knife. He began to carefully cut the thick, woody vines. It was hard work. The thorns scratched his hands, drawing small beads of blood that matched the beads on his wrist. He walked patiently, freeing the snake inch by inch. When the last vine was cut, the great python did not immediately flee. It uncoiled its massive body slowly, testing its freedom. Then it slithered toward Chidi. Chidi froze, terrified he had made a mistake. The snake raised its head until it was level with Chidi's face. It flicked its black tongue out, tasting the air near Chidi's cheek. It smelled the boy's sweat, his fear, and the blood on his hands. Then something extraordinary happened. The great snake leaned forward and gently pressed the cool scales of its snout on Chidi's forehead for just a second. A strange, cold tingle shot through Chidi's body, making him shiver from head to toe. The snake pulled back, looked at him one last time, and then turned. It flowed silently into the undergrowth like spilled water, vanishing instantly. When Okafor returned empty-handed, Chidi found him sitting by the tree, looking pale and dazed. "Are you ill, my son?" Okafor asked worriedly, touching his Chidi's hot forehead. "I am well, Papa," Chidi lied. He felt strange, as if the world had shifted slightly to the left. That night, Chidi burned with a fierce fever. He tossed on his sleeping mat, his sackcloth wrapper twisted around his legs. In his dreams, he did not see people. He saw swirling patterns of gold and brown scales. He heard thousands of whispering voices, like dry leaves skittering on stone. They spoke a language of sibilant hisses and soft clicks that he did not know, yet somehow he began to understand. He woke the next morning weak but clear-headed. The fever was gone. The world looked sharper, the colors brighter. He went outside to the small patch of land behind their hut, where his mother grew herbs. As he bent to pull a weed, a small green garden snake slithered out from under a rock. Chidi jumped back out of habit. The little snake stopped and lifted its head. "Careful, two legs," a tiny raspy voice said. "You nearly crushed my tail." Chidi spun around, looking for the speaker. No one was there. He looked back at the snake. Did you speak?" Chidi whispered, feeling foolish. The snake flicked its tongue. "Of course I speak. You are the one who usually stomps around deaf as a stone. But today you hear. You smell of the great mother python. She has marked you." Chidi sat down heavily in the dirt. It was true. The fever, the dreams, the strange tingle, the great python had given him a gift for saving its life. He could understand the language of snakes. Life changed rapidly for Chidi and his family. At first, Chidi was terrified of his new power. He walked around with his hands over his ears because the forest was too loud. Every rustle in the grass was a conversation. But soon, he realized the value of these gifts. He went hunting with Okafor. They sat quietly in a clearing. Okafor saw nothing. Chidi leaned close to a hole in a termite mound where a black cobra was resting. He made a soft hissing sound. "Great hooded one, where do the fat bush rats hide today?" Chidi whispered in the snake tongue. "The tasty furry ones. They are by the river, near the patch of sweet berries. Many." Chidi thanked the cobra and led his astonished father to the river. They returned that day with 5 large bush rats. Okafor could not believe their luck. Day after day, Chidi used his gift. He spoke to vipers hiding under logs, green mambas in the trees, and pythons near the water. They told him where the deer were sleeping, where the wild guinea fowls laid their eggs, and which paths to avoid because a leopard was nearby. The snakes did not mind helping him. To them, Chidi was no longer just a 2 legs, he was the marked one, touched by their queen. They respected him. Okafor's barn began to fill with yams traded for meat. Their bellies were full. Chidi's mother wove him a new, finer sackcloth wrapper, and Okafor bought him a new strand of shiny red, expensive red beads for his neck. The village began to look at Okafor with new respect. They called Chidi the boy with the lucky eyes. Only Chidi knew it wasn't luck. For a year, life was wonderful. Chidi became confident, almost arrogant. He felt he was the master of the forest. He walked deeper into the forest than any hunter dared, feeling safe because the snakes were his spies and his guardians. One day, feeling bold, Chidi ventured into a part of the forest known as the Whispering Grove. The villagers avoided it. They said the air there was too heavy and the spirits were restless. The trees here were ancient, their canopies so thick it was always twilight underneath. The air smelled of damp rot and old secrets. As Chidi walked, the usual chatter of the snakes faded. The small grass snakes and friendly vipers did not come here. Instead, Chidi saw a large dark shape draped over a mossy rock ahead. It was the great python he had saved, the queen herself. She was enormous, her body thick as a tree trunk. Chidi approached with respect, bowing low. "Great mother," he greeted in the sibilant tongue. She opened her ancient golden eyes. "Little savior, you have grown fat on the gifts of my children." "I have used your gift to help my family, great mother. We are grateful." "Gifts are tools, little savior. They can build or they can destroy. You walk with a heavy step now. Beware of greed. Beware of seeking what is not yours to know." Chidi was confused. I only seek food. For now, she hissed slowly, but the ears that hear too much soon grow restless. There are secrets in this earth, boy, that are buried for a reason. Do not listen to the deep whisperers. Before Chidi could ask what she meant, she slid away into the shadows. Chidi returned home troubled. Do not listen to the deep whisperers. What did she mean? His curiosity, a small seed planted by her warning, began to grow. He started listening harder when he was in the deep forest. Beyond the chatter of the common snakes, he began to hear other voices. They were faint, coming from deep underground, from the roots of the oldest trees. They were slippery, cold voices. The golden stool lies beneath the red rock. The water of long life drips in the cave of echoes. Power over the winds lies hidden. These were the deep whisperers. They were ancient snakes that lived deep in burrows, never seeing the sun. They guarded the earth's deepest secrets. The common snakes warned him. A friendly puff adder told him, "Do not listen to them, marked one. Their words are poison for the mind. They speak of things that drive two legs mad." But Chidi was a teenage boy now, headstrong and proud of his abilities. He thought, if I can find this golden stool or this water of long life, my family will never be poor again. We will be chiefs. I will be the greatest man in the land. The temptation was too great. He began to follow the voices. He spent days ignoring the hunt, instead pressing his ear to the ground, tracking the murmurs. He traveled far, to a rocky, barren part of the forest where nothing grew but twisted thorns. He found a deep fissure in the earth, a crack between two massive granite boulders. The cold voices were louder here. "Come down, marked one. Come see the truth," they hissed. Chidi took a deep breath, adjusted his sackcloth wrapper, and squeezed into the crack. It was a long, dark descent. The air grew cold and smelt of sulfur. Finally, he dropped into a large underground cavern. The only light came from strange glowing fungi on the walls, casting eerie blue and green shadows. In the center of the cavern was a perfectly round pool of black, oily water. And surrounding the pool were snakes unlike any Chidi had ever seen. They were pale white, blind, with skin that looked like wrinkled parchment. They had no eyes, only smooth indentations where eyes should be. They were the keepers of secrets. They sensed his presence and turned their blind heads toward him. A chorus of whispers filled the cavern, echoing off the stone walls. "He is here. The listener is here. Show him the price of knowing. Look into the water, boy." Chidi, mesmerized by the chorus of voices, walked to the edge of the black pool. "Is this the water of long life?" he asked, his voice shaking. "It is the water of truth," the blind snakes hissed together. "Look." Chidi looked into the oily black water. At first, he saw only his own reflection, his sackcloth, his red beads, his frightened face. Then the water rippled. Images began to form. He saw his village, but it was not his village as it was today. He saw the huts burning. He saw strange men with weapons of fire and loud thunder attacking. He saw his mother and father crying. He saw the forest cut down, the great trees bleeding sap, the red earth turned gray and barren. He saw the snakes dying, their bodies dried out in a scorching sun. He saw the future, a terrible, unavoidable future of change and destruction that would come long after he was dead, but was as certain as the rising sun. Then the water showed him more. It showed him the secret thoughts of his neighbors, their jealousy of his father's new wealth, their suspicion of Chidi. It showed him the pettiness, the lies, the small cruelties that people hid behind smiles. It was an avalanche of knowledge. It was too much. The weight of the future's tragedy and the burden of everyone's secrets crushed him. "Stop!" Chidi screamed, covering his eyes. "I don't want to see. I don't want to know." The blind snakes hissed, a sound like steam escaping. Knowledge cannot be unlearned, marked 1. You sought the hidden roots. Now you taste their bitter sap. The visions in his head wouldn't stop. The screams of his future village, the whispers of his jealous neighbors, it all roared in his ears. Chidi turned and fled. He scrambled up the rocky fissure, tearing his sackcloth and skin, not feeling the pain. He burst out into the sunlight of the forest, gasping for air. But the silence was gone. The forest was deafening. Every snake, every insect, every leaf seemed to be screaming the terrible truths he had seen in the black pool. He ran all the way back to his village, his eyes wide and staring, saliva foaming at his mouth. When Okafor saw his son, he dropped the yam he was holding. "Chidi, what happened in the forest?" Chidi looked at his father. For a second, he didn't just see his loving father. He saw the small doubts in Okafor's mind, the worry that his son was becoming strange, a fleeting jealous thought about a neighbor's better hunting dog. He could hear it all. "The noise," Chidi moaned, pressing his hands to his head. "Make it stop, Papa. Too much knowing, too much." He collapsed into a fever, far worse than the first one. For 3 days and nights he raved. He spoke of burning villages and blind white snakes. The herbalist came and shook her gourd rattle, sprinkling bitter juices over him, but she shook her head sadly. "His spirit is trapped in the other world," she said. On the 4th morning, Chidi awoke. The fever was gone. He was very weak. The roar in his head had subsided to a dull murmur. He knew what he had to do. He arose, wrapping his sackcloth around his thin waist. He walked out of the hut, past his sleeping parents, and into the misty morning forest. He walked straight to the Whispering Grove. He found the great mother python waiting for him. He fell to his knees before her, weeping. "Please," he begged in the snake language, "take it back. Take the gift back. I cannot bear it." The great python looked at him with sadness in her ancient eyes. "I warned you, little savior. Some roots must not be exposed to the sun. I was foolish. I was greedy. Please, great mother." She lowered her massive head until it was inches from his face. "I cannot take back what has been given. The door, once opened, cannot be fully closed, but I can close it partway." She opened her mouth and breathed on him. Her breath smelt of deep earth and ancient dust. It was a heavy, numbing fog that settled over Chidi's mind. The sharp, clear voices of the snakes dulled. The constant chatter faded into the background noise of the forest. He could still hear them if he concentrated very hard, but they were no longer shouting in his head. The terrible visions from the black pool faded into the distance like a nightmare remembered upon waking. "Go now," the great python commanded. "Live your life as its 2 legs. Hunt with your eyes and ears, not with stolen magic. And never seek the deep places again." Chidi thanked her, tears straining cheeks down his face. He turned and walked back toward the village. When he arrived, Okafor and his mother were awake, frantic with worry. When they saw him walking normally, his eyes clear again, they rushed to embrace him. "I am better, Papa," Chidi said softly. His voice sounded different, older, heavier. From that day on, Chidi was changed. He was no longer the exciting boy with the lucky eyes. He lost his incredible hunting skill and became an average hunter, like his father. The family was no longer rich with meat, but they had enough. Chidi rarely spoke. He spent much of his time working in the yam fields, his hands deep in the simple, honest red earth. He found comfort in the silence of the soil. Sometimes when he was alone in the forest, a snake would slither past and whisper a greeting. Chidi would just smile sadly and nod, not replying. He wore his simple sackcloth and his red beads with humility. He grew into a man who was known for his deep, quiet wisdom. People in the village would come to him for advice when they were troubled. He listened more than he spoke. He never told them the future, even though sometimes, in quiet moments, the whispers still tried to tell him. He told them only this: "Do not dig for secrets that do not belong to you. Enjoy the sun on your face today. Love your family. The earth holds enough mystery. Do not try to know it all." And so,
The boy who spoke the language of snakes became the man who understood the value of silence. He carried the weight of forbidden knowledge in a quiet corner of his soul, a heavy secret hidden beneath his red beads, until the day he returned to the earth.